Everything you've been taught about slavery in America is incomplete. What if I told you the first people sold into the Caribbean weren't Africans? They were the so-called Indians of the Americas themselves, and the original documents prove so. Indian slavery in colonial times within the present limits of the United States. During the war with the Colonial Indians in 1680, the captive Indians were brought to Charleston and sold by Governor West to the traders in the colony to be carried to the West Indies as slaves. This passage just proved that the earliest slaves were Indians. 1680, we don't hear nothing about no Africans being brought whatsoever. We seeing that the influx of Indians that was brought to the Caribbeans were Indians, Stono Indians, and the Stono Indians is a collective of Indians, the Tuscaroras, the Yamasees, of various Carolina Indians. Indian slaves from Caribana trade and labor in the 17th century of the Caribbean. Columbia University. The Caribbean Indians who rejected colonization became targets for enslavement. Slavers captured indigenous people in raids or through trade within indigenous dominant territories. I conceptualize this space as Caribana. Geographically, it stretched from Guyana northward throughout islands of the Lesser Antilles. I focus on the indigenous captives from Caribana who were enslaved in English and Dutch colonies, namely Barbados. People love to talk about the sugarcane plantation in the Caribbean, and they always love to associate Africans with it. But it looks like to me those people who was in those sugarcane plantations were indigenous people, not Africans. The Natchez offered to leave the place if their lives were spared. Their offer was accepted, but they were detained as prisoners, all but 20 who escaped. About 450 of the tribe, including the great son, the little son, and several of the principal war chiefs, were captured and carried to New Orleans. The women and children were retained as slaves on the plantations. That sounds familiar, right? Didn't they say that same thing about Africans? Quite interesting. Some of the prisoners were burned in New Orleans. The great son, the little son, and their families. More than 400 of the captives were sent from Cape Francois, Haiti, and most of them sold to planters as slaves. Now I know we despise tethers, but we need to tell the truth. A lot of American Indians were shipped to Haiti, and they are the descendants of the Natchez and various of different other tribes in New Orleans and Louisiana as well. We need to take that to account. And it's so funny that the African story is compared to the Indian story. It's so many comparisons, right? Why is there so many comparisons? It's almost like they told us a lie. The male children among the Massachusetts captives were ordered by the Massachusetts General Court 1637 to be carried to the Bermudas by William Pierce and sold there as slaves. The shipload of Indians, however, consisting of 15 boys and 2 women, were taken by Captain Pierce to the West Indies instead of to the Bermudas and disposed of at the islands of the Providence. One Pequot seized near Block Island was sent to England. A letter from the Company of Providence Islands replying from London, July 3rd, 1638, to letters from authorities on the island, directing that special care be taken of the cannibal Negro brought from New England. Cannibal Negroes brought where? From New England. Who was coming here from New England? The Indians. In a second letter within in 1639, with the company fearing the danger that might arise from too large of a number of Negroes in the island, suggested that the Negroes be sold or sent to New England or Virginia. I just showed you who has been sent to what? The islands, right? And now they saying it's too many of them. We need to send them out. These are cannibals. The Negroes be sold or sent to New England or Virginia may possibly have been called forth by a further purchase of Indians or by the exchange of Negroes for them. Don't get confused. Remember that I told you in the last video that the Spanish colonial laws, such as the new laws of 1542, were established by the Spanish crown to prevent the enslavement of indigenous people after recognizing their rights to some degree. But here's the kicker. However, these laws were largely circumvented in practice to avoid penalties associated with indigenous slavery. Traders mislabeled indigenous people as Africans or as originated from regions where the Spanish crown had allowed the enslavement of people. Like I said, Indian and Negro is interchangeable, and they purposely changed the identity of the Indian to African or Negro. And that's the flat out truth. History books won't even teach you this in school. You can only find this in colonial records or colonial books. It shows you that the indigenous people were the slaves, and they sent the indigenous people to the Caribbeans, and the Spanish rebranded them as Africans and sent them back to North America, thus changing them to Africans when they came here. You have seen this in the record I showed you. The court case, remember Rachel versus Butt, 1812? Crazy work, right? I just showed you who was the slave in America.
Put them up! Keep the line!
Keep walking.
Creator, watch over us!
They can take us from the land, not from who we are.